All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. Starting a new series. This one's going to be called Relationship Theories series. I don't know how deep or far into this I'm going to go. I think what's going to help is to mainly connect any type of theory or idea to either a personal experience or something I've witnessed firsthand, where I've maybe been involved. I'm trying not to make it too theoretical, so it's going to be limited mostly based on things that I've experienced, witnessed, come to some kind of understanding about. I don't know yet if I'm going to go into actual psychological theories and keep doing that. I did post some stuff previously about Erickson's theories and things like that. I might go back into that, but just because there was some stuff about the current stage that I'm in with my age range and things, how it relates to relationships. And when I say relationships, it can be anything from friendships to something more on the romantic side. I don't know. I don't really like saying romantic because I'm not really a romantic person. So it's kind of like a weird, like I know when people say romantic, they mean like, like a different form of intimacy that's not just homies. But I mean, people can be friends and still be having sex with each other and stuff too. So it's not necessarily to say that there has to be like a limit. Like I'd say like stereotypically there's usually, at least in Western culture, there's a pretty big differentiation. But I don't know. I would like to look at other cultures too. There was something that came up in two different types of tribes that I wasn't ever 100% sure about, that I saw like in a documentary. One was with the Maasai, and I guess the males, like when they're of a younger age, they have like a certain type of hairstyle with a lot of adornments and like accessories, and their hair is it seems like it's longer, with braids and a certain kind of style that they culturally for them that's a method of beauty. And when they become men and they're no longer, I think it's when they're no longer warriors and they're now men, gonna be married and becoming men, in the tribe, they have their hair cut, and there was some mention of people who are of the tribe, so once they're becoming men, they no longer have what's called like their girlfriends. I don't know what the label is or the title, but it seems that when they're still warriors and younger age, when they still have their long hair and that type of style, they are outside a lot, out in the countryside a lot, protecting the land and things like that, and and they have girls from the tribe that are like their girlfriends. I don't know the age ranges of any of these people, but it seems like once they become men and they're gonna partake in like marriage, or able to partake in marriage, they no longer have those girlfriends. So that was something that interested me, that I was kind of like, I wonder what that is, and if it was just like a specific group of that tribe or what, or if it was just because I'd only really seen it or heard it in one documentary when I was kind of studying like Maasai culture. And then there was another with the Himba women. Like I noticed with the Himba tribe, a lot of times they show the women more so than anybody else. And maybe it's because of the hairstyles, because they have like these long braids and they put a type of some type of ground up earth. I don't know, something from the earth. It's some kind of, I could be wrong. I don't know what it is. It's either like a clay or a powder or something that they make the powder or like grind up some kind of maybe combination of different things into this red, brownish red type of cream that they make, like with I don't know if it's with like a butter or something, but they put it on the outside of the braids, so it looks like basically the braids have this kind of covering on them, and that's kind of what they look like. And there was something when there was a camera person who's a guy, Caucasian male, and it seemed like they were trying to get him to go sleep with one of the females. She seemed like she was inviting him to come sleep with her or something. And I don't know to what extent that was, or if that is something actual tribal in their culture or not. I don't know if it was, because I'd only seen it in that one documentary too. When I was studying the Himba tribe culture, I only saw that one instance of women inviting in like a stranger as like a type of welcoming, to be like, it sounded like they would be able to like cuddle and just be together alone in her dwelling, because she was an unmarried woman of a certain age range, and that was appropriate. And I don't really know. I'm not judging it or anything. It's just there's some other branched off stuff that has to do with relationships that I'd kind of like to study with other cultures, but I feel like we might get way off topic going in that direction. And it's not something that I'm so knowledgeable about. And especially when it's like, to me, it's always interesting when I see, when I'm watching like cultural documentaries or getting information about cultural perspectives. Usually it's a Western culture coming to see the other culture, like the Himba culture. I think there was this one show I saw where the Himba ladies or Himba people, like there was some family that was living on the land that got permission to build their own house on their land because they wanted to live in the culture, and they were allowed to do it. And basically people from the Himba tribe would come over and like see how the Westerners lived, and we're kind of like, this is weird. And just kind of that cultural difference of how they just hung out together inside that house or whatever. But I don't know. I've never really seen like too much of the other perspectives, like, give the Himba tribe or the Maasai, give them the camera and have them talk. So, to talk about their experiences or their life from their point of view. It's always like the questions and the information is kind of being like through a Western lens. And so I don't feel like that gives the best perspective, because we're going to be asking questions based on our own culture and trying to see what they're doing in their culture and kind of like comparing it to our culture and trying to see how it's different and different things like that. So there's a bit missing. And yeah, so when it comes to cultural stuff, I don't know how deep into cultures we're going to get. I'd like to, but I don't really know if that's going to really go anywhere. But we'll see. And then, yeah, like overall, I just wanted to talk about pretty much the theories surrounding relationships. So I think the place that I would start, the the first place I would start, um, if I knew somebody who was either having trouble making friends, um, or um, didn't really know which direction to even like start with like friendships and relationships in general, like different types of relationships with new people. um I would say an individual's personality is going to be pretty key in, the types of relationships that they attract and the types of people that they attract and the types of settings that they are in. So a person's personality, their individual personality, is usually it's going to be based on a lot of things, like just your natural temperament, experience with different types of places. So for example, you can have a natural temperament of being like just naturally a shy person, but you may have gone into a work field where you're familiar with doing public presentations and speeches. And I mean, that is myself probably, for example. Like, I would consider myself a pretty shy person. Most people might not say that I am, but I know that I'm a shy person. But, I've been in a field working for so long where you have to talk to people every single day. You meet new people on a very regular basis. You're talking in meetings at least once a week, if not 2-3 times a week. You're the one giving the presentations. I was doing groups like twice a week where I was the one leading, facilitating the group, teaching the topics. You know, I couldn't just not talk. Like, basically I had to talk like all the time. And so even though, I think I'm a very verbal person, but I tend to prefer like writing. I like podcasting, writing, things like that. But even if it's a social setting with like one person or multiple people or brand new people, it's not that I don't like talking to people. It's just that I prefer maybe to keep things to myself or be a little more on the reserved end. But not like in a shady way. Like, I'm not trying to like hide any like deep thing. Like, of course, like everybody has their own secrets and things that they're not just gonna be like sharing with the whole world, but it's like, or with anybody and to some extent, but just naturally, temperament wise, I would say temperament is a kind of natural thing. If you're left to your own self to do what you want to do, you can kind of see kind of where your energy kind of leads you. It might be energy leading you places out of anxiety and stress or depression or whatever, or trauma. It might be energy that just naturally you want to do this because it's fun. Like, you might like to party a lot. You might have a lot of energy socially. You like being around people that you don't even know, talking to complete strangers, going out to clubs, bars, just meeting new people. But that might be because you're outgoing, but it might also be because you're anxious and don't want to be alone with your thoughts in your house by yourself in quiet and silence. The same thing with shyness. It could be from another place. It might not be because of just being naturally shy. Like, it might be some other thing. Like, it might be because of trauma or because of depression, because of anxiety, whatever it may be. It might be because of another kind of situation going on, that you're shy or that you're outgoing. So that's something that I don't know if it's anyone's place to really like try and tease that out, but that's one thing to kind of recognize is sorry. Like, it's like I always think about if you've ever seen that show, I think it's with Martin. I think Martin with Martin Lawrence. He says like, you better recognize. But yeah, if you recognize that, I don't think people really say that anymore. It's kind of like a 90s slang type of thing. But yeah, just people kind of recognizing things. about themselves, and trying to determine if it comes from like a place of uh shyness, like I don't know, it doesn't have to be specifically shy or outgoing, but or like introverted and extroverted, or somewhere in between. It doesn't have to be like you're doing things because it's negative, or you're doing things because just naturally that's how you are, but it's not from like some other kind of like issue going on that's like not resolved. um I think everybody has insecurities, to some extent. Sometimes people are able to work with their own insecurities. Sometimes those insecurities affect the individual specifically. um so an example of an insecurity affecting a person would be like, um say for example, like if somebody doesn't like their body weight, for example, or their body figure, and wearing maybe like shirts that are like baggier, to counter maybe if they have like a belly or something, and they don't like that. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I'm just saying like that's a common thing. Excuse me, I'm like something in my throat all the time. But yeah, something that has to do with like insecurities. Like when people have insecurities, if the insecurities getting in their way, say for example, somebody wearing an extra large shirt because it hides their stomach, and they're insecure about their stomach kind of popping out if they wear like a medium sized shirt, which medium would fit them, but they would rather do the extra large size versus the medium size, because they don't want their belly like sticking out. And so if that was an example of an insecurity that somebody had, an example of that getting in the way would be maybe there's certain environments that they avoid because of the shirt. Because like, okay, well maybe not only does the person like to wear extra large shirts only, but they don't like shirts with collars or buttons for some, like this is maybe part of it, they don't like those polo shirts with the collar. They don't like short sleeve button downs. They don't like long sleeve button downs, button ups, dress shirts, whatever, flannels, whatever. They don't like any shirts with buttons, because maybe they're afraid because one time a button maybe popped out when they were like sitting down and people were like teasing them about it. So now they don't wear shirts with buttons at all, even if it's like the 3 or 4 buttons at the top of a polo. They just don't do the buttons anymore. And so, say if they need to go to, a lot of straight clubs, they have dress codes. So, say if they needed to go to a club where they needed a collared shirt, or an event where they needed to wear a collared shirt, or a place, an environment where, say like a job interview, you might need to wear a dress shirt or something like that. And this person just doesn't wear what they need to wear to go certain places, but maybe all their friends only hang out at clubs, and they don't have a job and they can't interview for jobs because they don't want to wear a dress shirt. And none of these things are like 100%. Like there's always like exceptions. Like you can find a club that's not going to make you have to dress. Queer clubs don't really care. I've never come across a queer club that's like you're not dressed the code, so you can't come in. I mean, like, but the straight ones do, and so I don't really know. But and I wear all kinds of stuff, but yeah, I think it's pretty interesting, um, how insecurities. I mean, I have my own insecurities. I'm not like bagging on anybody else's, um, but yeah, if a person has insecurities, the insecurities and things might get in their way. They might be getting in their way. And in that specific example, maybe the person doesn't have a, um, maybe they don't have work, and maybe they just no longer hang out with their closest friends because their closest friends only hang out at a club, at a specific club that they all really like. And so this person can't get in because of the dress code thing. And so it's like, that type of thing is like an insecurity that's maybe just like a physical one, but it turns into other stuff. It's like now your work is affected. Now your friendships might be a little bit affected. And it's like, or at least hanging out with them. Like, it doesn't mean that you can't be friends, but it's like you might not see them all the time if they're only hanging out at that one spot, that you don't dress the code to go in. So it can be an insecurity, it could be a discomfort, a dysphoria, whatever you want to call it. Those are not all the same things. They're not all the same words. Those are all completely separate terms. But I'm just talking about insecurities in general. Usually people, when they're insecure about something, they try to hide it. And sometimes the method used to hide the thing gets in the way of other things for themselves. Insecurities can also cause problems with other people. That is probably the one when it comes to relationships that is usually one of the harder things to kind of work through. And it can be insecurities on both sides. Like, say for example, if I could use the same exact example, but say this insecurity is now getting in the way of a friend that I just met. I just made a friend online. Who knows what website? Just pick one. Pick one of the apps, dating apps, mingling apps, Christian mingle, whatever. You picked them, plenty of fish or whatever. You met or talked. You decided to meet. You meet up. Things are going pretty good. And, maybe let's call it like the third time you're meeting this person, and you start canceling, you start canceling plans because, if it's myself, let me say I'm the person canceling plans with this new friend, because of an insecurity about the shirt, the types of shirts that I'm going to wear. Say that person confronted me saying, okay, like I like to go to these places and this is the dress code. And I'm kind of like, I'm not into it, I'm not comfortable with the dress code. I can't find a comfort zone of what I want to wear that is comfortable for what I need to wear. And even if I could get in the door wearing just a regular Hanes plain blue, dark blue, whatever color t-shirt, it's not fitted, it's extra large, trying to hide this belly insecurity. Maybe on my end the goal is to hide the insecurity, but on the other end maybe this new person I've met is like embarrassed by my clothing. Now I'm not saying it's that people should be like, okay, bend over backwards or go against your own comfort just to try to make somebody else comfortable. But it's like, if I'm going places where I know there's a dress code and I know I'm expected to dress a certain way, but they'll just kind of let me in the door maybe. And, maybe this person expressed to me like, okay, like, like you're not dressed appropriately for this. And maybe to them it's embarrassing. They're embarrassed that I walk in wearing God only knows what, but not the dress code. So maybe that could get in the way of a relationship. And it's not something that can't be changed. I mean, people can lose weight, people can start to exercise, people can get comfort in their body. There are things that can change to make it so that this person no longer has this aversion towards like buttons on shirts, like nice kind of like more dressed up shirts. And it's also just a cultural thing, right? Like culturally, we've all agreed in the Western world that if you have some buttons and certain style shirts are considered more appropriate for some environments, or certain style shirts are considered better. I don't know if quality is the right word, but better, like nicer. They're considered nicer than just like a plain t-shirt. or a tank top or whatever. Like, we've all agreed that this is considered nice compared to that. Um, this is considered more dressed up compared to that. And I mean, in all honesty, it doesn't really make a difference. It's just you put on a certain kind of fabric, it's all just fabric, cloth, or whatever. Like, what's the difference really wrapping yourself in a blanket or a towel and leaving the house, versus like wearing some like something that's considered, a certain way. Like, it's really just how we look at things. Like, if you were to take someone who wasn't familiar with Western culture and Western style clothing, and like, I don't know if they would just naturally pick the ones with the collars and the buttons and be like, this looks better than that one. Like, I don't think people really would care. They would gravitate towards what they think is more nice. So, but yeah, usually insecurities, that's like a mild example of how insecurities can get in other people's ways. I think a lot of times it can be more intense, like things that cause arguments. It could be like a dress style that causes uncomfortable conversation. That could be a thing. Or even like someone's style of tone, someone's like, if you think, just, there's a lot of stuff that causes arguments, between people, or some level of discomfort between people, or misunderstandings between people. But I think overall, when it comes to new relationships, those are the major areas. I think the personality style, just kind of like the temperament and personality of a person, where they're going to be, what they're going to be doing, the types of activities they're going to choose, combined with that other person's temperament. Like, we've heard people say opposites attract, but it's like, combining those two temperaments. So, if I'm a shy person, I don't mind outgoing people. Like, that's great. But I don't know. For me, kind of trying to interact with really shy people, like, sometimes it's really cool because, you can just sit there, have a coffee, go to a coffee shop, both bring a book, sit there with each other, hang out together. You don't have to be like talking all the time and like sharing information like that, or communicating verbally with one another. You can go on walks and stuff. It can be kind of lower key. But I'm not one to want to stay in the house all the time. Like, if I'm on a date or like hanging out with friends or whatever, I'm not always like, yeah, you come over or I'll come over and we'll just like sit inside and like watch Netflix all day. Like, to me, that's not something I'd want to do all the time. I like to be in different environments and in different spaces and stuff like that. Like, I'm not really too much of a homebody. Like, I'm shy, but I'm not really a homebody. So that is kind of the part that makes it a little confusing. And, I've had a lot of experience talking a lot and to a lot of different people. So even if it's not a super comfortable thing or something that I would always prefer, I can do it well, often. But it's not always like something that I'm totally like, oh yeah, this is totally what I want to do. I totally want to just like talk to people all day. Like, sometimes I'm just not into it. But I'll still do it, and I can still perform well doing it. But sometimes it's just like, man, this is not naturally what I want to be doing sometimes. The talking part anyways. But yeah, so that's just one idea I've been working with. One set of ideas. It's just like the early phases of just like the background of kind of like what types of things can be important to look at. And I'll get in more depth in some other ideas too, but things to look at would definitely be that the temperament, like kind of like the energy that a person exudes, the kind of energy that they're seeking, like knowing what kind of energy the other person is seeking. It might bother them to be with a really shy person. It might bother them to be with a really outgoing person. It might bother them to be with somebody in the middle. Um, I'm not saying, like it's just how it is, like we all have our own preferences. I have my own preferences. Like when I'm out with somebody, I don't know if I'd want to. I don't spend too much time around like ultra outgoing people that are just like, we're going to go to a restaurant, you're going to talk to like, you're not even going to be at our table because you're up talking to other people and, talking to the waiter and talking while we're waiting for the table and talking to the to the people at the desk and, talking out in the parking lot. Is like, dang, like sometimes I think it's other people's energy sometimes for me can be like a bit too much, especially if it's like someone I'm going to be seeing on a regular basis. It might be like too much for me. Or people who like to get to a certain level. So maybe they're naturally shy or naturally outgoing, but they like to get like super sedated with like something or super hyped up with something like alcohol or other types of substances or whatever to put them in a certain mood and make them kind of act a certain way. And if when I'm interacting with them, if they're interacting in a way that's like too much for me to kind of handle, that's another common thing that comes up is just kind of like the energy levels, even if it's not natural energy that you're always consciously showing or even unconsciously showing. Like substances bring out another kind of energy, either induced by the substances or it kind of brings out other unconscious stuff sometimes too. And sometimes it can be really hard to be around certain people. I noticed that for me, so I'm pretty sure other people have the same thing. But trying to like organize it in a way that makes sense, just kind of, I think overall with these topics, it helps to kind of know your own mind with stuff. So know yourself behaviorally, knowing yourself, and mentally kind of knowing yourself and your own preferences, and then knowing what you're looking for, and then taking that and knowing, what another person's energy needs to be like, for their temperament to match with what you prefer, which isn't going to be like overwhelming to you all the time. Maybe some of the time, like everyone isn't going to be like 100%, 110% in every social situation. You're like, I always want to be here exactly as it is, and everybody's energy is matching the way that I want it to match. It's like that never really happens all the time. Like days are going to be off, times are going to be off, time periods are going to be off. Depending on the event or the other person's situation. Maybe they didn't sleep well last night, then they had to work late, and now they're meeting you and they're showing up late, and you're a little, hangry because you're eating late, and now, you're eating late and you're tired already, and now they're tired and they're late, and then there might be a little bit of a, okay, like you're late, like what's up, like kind of like they're not in the mood to hear it, and you're not in the mood to kind of experience things the way they're being experienced right now. And sometimes it just doesn't mesh perfectly well, even though overall you might be really good together. So that's something I've noticed too, is that it's like a pretty it's a pretty it helps a lot to know a lot about your own self, to know about your own preferences, your own experiences, what works for you when you're alone, what works for you when you're with another person. And if that shifts, if it's not always consistent all the time, just knowing how to sense, like, okay, today I'm in a really social mood. Yesterday I totally wasn't. Today I really want to be isolated. Tomorrow I might really want to go party. It's like, if you know that you're kind of like going to get pumped up in a couple days, then maybe that's the time to make the plans to go to the club. Not on the night when you want to just have an introverted night and sit in and, you know, read a book with a hot beverage by the fireplace and cozy up in a blanket and just chill. You know, maybe you don't want to, you know, maybe, you know, it just takes some like knowing what it is and paying attention to yourself and knowing what you need and want, and then seeing what's out there that kind of matches that energy. Like if you're around somebody who's always, where you always feel drained after you meet with them, you know, there might be a reason for that. You know, there might be something going on with that relationship. Even if it's just a friendship, like maybe there's something going on. Maybe you guys are only meeting at times when it's not ideal. Like I think I've mentioned before that, like, you know, I've had friends in the past who, you know, we never talked while they were sober, but, you know, not only that, but they wouldn't call me at times when I was most available. So if I was going to go to sleep at like 10 or wanted to not be on the phone at 10 p.m., late in the evening, and they didn't mind being on the phone late at 10 p.m., and they would call me at like 9:45, and I already knew that they were kind of like under the influence, and it was going to be like a weird conversation all over the place, and I'm already trying to unwind and go to sleep. I'm not trying to be all like pumped up and like, you know, so that kind of thing. If I did answer the phone, it's kind of like, okay, like this isn't going to be like the best quality conversation because I'm just answering because we haven't talked for a while, but I don't really want to talk, you know. But it's like, like I haven't, it's been like 6 months because I've been avoiding their calls because they call late and they don't wake up early when I'm like, hey, call me at 10 in the morning, and they're like, I'm not even awake yet, you know. It's like there can be clashes in lifestyles and stuff too, where it's kind of like, yeah, you're friends, yeah, you get along, yeah, you respect and love each other, but it's like sometimes it's not like super easy because one person or both people are doing like things where there's just not, it's just not aligning on a lot of different levels. So kind of just noticing what kind of aligns, how it does, how it doesn't align, and definitely those pieces with the temperament, the preferences, and just kind of like different kind of things that could potentially get in the way. Like if there's stuff, sorry for the noise, like I keep opening and closing the door. It's freezing outside because it's really breezy and windy, but it's nice and warm in the car because the sun's out, and so it keeps getting hot in the car, but then it's like cold and windy and loud outside. So keeping the car door open. I'm outside trying to get some sunlight and just some space to record. But basically, yeah, things that are insecurities. So temperament, insecurities, preferences, an alignment. Those things are kind of key. And let's see. I'm gonna write that down just so I don't forget. Let's see. So yeah, temperament, alignment, preferences, is that all? Yeah, so trying to arrange that in a way that kind of makes sense, but more in like a strategy form. I think if anything can be put into like, I mean, it's not so cut and dry with humans though, because there's so many variables to consider. Like I mentioned, like sometimes it can be just the difference between like sleeping well and eating well that makes a social interaction or a combination of social interactions good. Sometimes one person's life is super stressful all of a sudden because they've got a bunch of weird, emergencies coming up, like cars breaking down, or their job shutting down, or like stuff that's happening where it's like you just met this person and they've got this whole other situation going on over there, that's kind of hard to manage. So that would probably be what I would say for this first set. It's just kind of like the theories that are kind of like, or just like ideas that are kind of just like general ideas of what's going on, how it's going on, why it's happening that way. Those are kind of the first things to look at. And then also, I mean, like, it might sound stupid, I always say this, but like reflection, taking time to like reflect on things is like studying. It's like, yeah, you went to the class already, you heard the lecture, but did you go home and do the homework and kind of like delve into the topic and practice it for yourself, and then come back and then practice it again in another class and in another session, and practice it again at another time from what you learned from doing the homework and reviewing the lessons, like just kind of treating relationships almost like a lesson in a way, to like learn from. Because then you learn about a lot about yourself, and then you learn a lot about that one particular person, and then in general situations surrounding that one particular person. So you're not always just stuck with one scenario or one viewpoint, but you can kind of reflect on a lot of different social dynamics and kind of be able to kind of see what's actually happening, versus just like going through it and not really having any understanding of it. It's almost equivalent to like, you go to a class and you listen to the lecture, and there might be points that you're not sure on, or you don't really know, or you've never experienced, or you've never practiced, or you've never thought about, and you just keep going to lectures and keep going to lectures and keep going to lectures. And then it comes down to, an opportunity to meet a new person, and, you find that opportunity to meet this new individual, and you don't even really get together or something because of all these other things that like maybe you just don't really know. You're not really paying attention and like tracking what's actually going on. But yeah, with newer relationships, that's one way to kind of look at some new topics, and or just some common. I'd say these are more like common topics, just to kind of like play with and see kind of like, okay, are we at least aligning on these and how we deal with these? Because I think it's going to be hard to, make a solid friendship or other type of relationship if you don't know how to work with your own and the other person's insecurities, if you don't know how to work with your own and the other person's temperament and all the preferences and just kind of different things that might even be considered like setbacks or something. So, yeah, that would be kind of the first topic, I would say. But, yeah, I'll keep posting some more. Some of the stuff I've written down, and I have to put it into audio mode, but or an audio form. But yeah, this is for now the first topic.